Yo, what's goody? It's Bear in the building. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Kueen Talk. If you guys are new here, welcome. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, like button, leave a comment, and let us know what you think of this episode. Today's special guest is an aerospace engineer, Grammy nominated artist, and the founder of STEM Music LLC. Please help me welcome Roy Moye III. Thank you so
What's
much, Roy.
up? Yeah, what's up? So glad to be on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for being here with me and joining me. I know you are a busy man, so thank you for punching me in on that schedule of yours.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you reached out. And it was maybe a month and a half ago or so, or even way before that, but when we actually met in person. And so, yeah, I'm glad we could find some time on the calendar to just talk about life and get into it.
Yeah, for sure. Will you give the audience just a little bit about yourself, the little rundown?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Roy Moye III. As she mentioned, I'm an aerospace engineer, but also an artist, a singer, songwriter. I'm Black, Puerto Rican, and Mexican. Yes, that's three things, and I love all of those cultures and things that come with that. I'm gay, and I identify as he, him, his. And just excited to be a resident of Wichita, Kansas, and using all the gifts God has given me to share with the world right from Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah, and so I found this article. Were you born in Germany? Is that
Uh,
right?
Yes, I was born in Kaiserslautern, Germany. Yeah, Kaiserslautern.
Yeah,
Yes.
I didn't know how to pronounce that part, but I was like, wait, I never knew that. Is that like, do you tell people that a lot? Like, is that? I feel
Yeah.
like
I
that's a
put
fun
in
fact about
longer
you.
bio. Yeah, longer bios it'll be in there. But my father was in the Army, active duty back in the day in the '90s when I was born in '92, and he was stationed in Kaiserslautern, Germany, or K Town. So a lot of Americans live there because it's a military town. But the fun fact is, you mentioned I'm an aerospace engineer, and so how I fell in love with airplanes. My theory is I was born in K Town, Kaiserslautern, and then 3 weeks after being born, I was on a plane back to the States. So I did
Okay.
not grow up there. I did not live there, and so I always tell my parents it's child abuse, like how you put a baby on a plane. We're not talking 3 months. We're talking 3 weeks. My mom always says, my parents are from Ohio, so my mom always she always says, "Boy, we wasn't caring about you. We was trying to get home." She holds that to this day, but that's how I believe I fell in love with airplanes. Was right when I was born. I was on a 7-8 hour flight back to the state.
Yeah. Let's get into the airplane and the STEM world. You started this career. Let's just start. You quit your job, your full
Yeah,
time corporate job, which congratulations. Like that's a huge leap of faith to just be like, okay. And it took you a journey, right? I You said 2015 you wanted to do this. Um, but let's talk about like how you got into the STEM world and where that started for you.
yeah. Great question, and thank you so much. Yes, it has been a journey, a 9-year journey to get to a place where I could jump and leave my corporate job to pursue music full time, specifically STEM music, which I know we'll talk about later. But my love of airplanes, like I said, coming over to the States on a plane, I truly, that's my belief, because every kid loves airplanes. Every kid goes, ooh, ah. But I am the person who's like, that is a Boeing 737-800 Southwest Airlines. That's a CRJ 700 Delta Connection. That's an Embraer 170 United. And I know the routes and like the major hubs and all this stuff. I book flights for my family. It's a whole thing. I'm a nerd about planes. And so growing up, I was like, how can I design them? How can I even had the thought process too in high school of like, I come from a family of 5. So although we're not a huge family, it's still bigger than maybe the average where you got one kid or 2 kids, And so we never really flew anywhere. And that made me so mad. So I was like, what if I can design an airplane that, is more eco-friendly? So you pay less for the tickets. And of course, there's more that goes into that. But even in high school, I was thinking of things like that. And also just the way that airplanes look and how they move and operate. And so my father, being in the Army, was able to get the terminology aeronautical engineer. And once I got that language, I then started, doing research on Ask Jeeves at the time, Google, Yahoo, all those, websites, and just trying to find what I could do and how I could study this thing called aeronautical, which later aerospace engineering. And so yeah, found Wichita State via Wikipedia and the weather, because I grew up in Raytown, Missouri, a suburb of
Right.
Kansas. And yeah, next thing you know, I'm at Wichita State majoring in aerospace engineering.
Did you was that very strategic, knowing that Wichita is like the air capital of the world, or was that just like a coincidence?
Very much a coincidence. It's so funny how that happened. I just told somebody this story the other day. I'll try to keep it short. But essentially, when you grow up in Raytown, Missouri or Kansas City, Missouri, you're watching the weather. There's a W city that is down to if you're watching the TV, down to the left. And so I get on Wikipedia. I had already applied to four other colleges. And so I said, just round it out, like apply to a fifth college and see. So I go on Wikipedia. I search aerospace engineering degree programs, bachelor's programs, United States. Open up that list. I'm scrolling down, and I get to Wichita State University at the very bottom, towards the bottom of that list. I'm like, that looks like the city that's on the weather map. That's literally what happened. And then I said, I'm going to click on it. That's why I clicked on it. If I didn't know it, because there was like Wright State University and others with W, but I didn't know them. But I recognized Wichita because of the weather on KMBC 9
Wow.
and with Brian Buzz. But I clicked on it, and that is in Wikipedia where I saw it say air capital of the world. And I was like, wait a minute, what? In Wichita, Kansas? And so long story short, I asked my father if we could go tour at Wichita State University. And we came to Wichita, we toured, and it was a God thing, but I was not happy about this God thing at the time because I wanted to go to Ohio State or, my parents are from Ohio, or Embry-Riddle, which is always in the top 5, aerospace engineering programs in the country. And that's in Daytona Beach, Florida. They have a site in Arizona as well, but I wanted to go to Daytona Beach. But it was $60,000 a year. Like, that's crazy.
Jeez, yeah.
And so I'm like, we go visit, and out of all the students to give the tour of Wichita State University, it was an aerospace engineering senior. His name was Scott. I'll never forget it. And I remember thinking that is very odd because engineers traditionally are not these social people. Like nowadays, generationally, I feel like it's changed a little bit to where engineers show up a little bit more socially, especially the younger generation. But at that time, it's like, what? He gives us a tour. Then he's like, you guys are going to go see the residential hall, Fairmount Towers at the time. So I'm like, cool. And then he pulls me and my dad aside. He says, you're the only student on this tour who is interested in aerospace engineering, who wants to major in that. He said, I am an aerospace engineering major, and you can go see the dorms, or we could go see the wind tunnels and the aircraft models. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, yes. So he got a golf cart, took us there, we toured. And the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm like, why is this happening? Like, I'm just coming to visit. Like, I don't want to go here. Others, I felt a peace. Me and my dad were looking over the baseball field. If you've ever been, the stadium, X Stadium is really big. And it's like, oh my gosh. So we're just marveling over, the stadium, looking over the field. And at one point, my father walked away from me. I know now what it was. I didn't know at the time, but the peace that surpasses all understanding. Like, I felt this peace over my body, and I was mad about it. I was like, why am I feeling this? No, God, I don't want to, And so, yeah, long story short, they also have a program called Midwest Student Exchange Program, which still exists at Wichita State University. And so that reduced the out-of-state tuition in Missouri to like an in-between amount. And that's when I was like, yeah, this is where you're going. This is where you're going to school.
That's nice, and that's a nice plug that you just gave right there too.
Oh, yeah,
With
I'm
that,
always repping Wichita State. I'm hosting the Heritage Awards. I'm always repping my alma mater. Wichita State opened up so many doors for me as a student, as a young person, even in my singing career. So much of what I do now, the foundation all happened at Wichita State.
And so you got your bachelor's in aerospace engineering there and a minor in mathematics at Wichita State University. Yeah. So
I'm like, did that really happen? Yes, Roy, it happened.
yeah, and so like I've read that like you wanted to do this STEM because of the lack of brown and black children that are involved in it, and so I assume like when you were in these classes, was there a lot of representation that looked like you going to Wichita State? Did you see a lot of students? Was it shocking that you did actually see a lot of students? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think for me, and you have to understand that the context that I was coming from was, it's interesting. I was just in Raytown the other week, and I was thinking about my high school time. And I'm like, our school was predominantly black, made up of black students. But I was in a lot of these advanced learning classes and stuff like that. And I used to be so frustrated, like, I want to be in class with my people, but I was in calculus in high school and other things. And so there wasn't as many Black students in those classes, unfortunately. And that's a whole other conversation of, how, people, the lack of resources and stuff like that I am very passionate about. But anyway, I digress. So I get to college and there wasn't as many Black or Latino students in my classes. But for the Black students that were in my class, it's interesting. They were mostly African students from Africa versus African-American students. And so although you had, and they're like brothers and sisters to me because we were all in the National Society of Black Engineers at Wichita State, like that chapter, it still was a little different that you were like in my graduating class at Wichita State University in aerospace engineering. So that is a very like smaller group, but within aerospace engineering, there's one aerospace engineering Black graduate. And you might be saying, oh, wow, Roy, that was you. No, remember, I'm half Black and I'm half Latino. So it's me and my roommate he's half Black and half Asian, and us together made the one American. There were other Black graduates in aerospace engineering, but they were African. One African-American graduate, and it was us together. Together, we made that. Which is hilarious to me. And he's working at NASA right now. And so it was very interesting to go through that journey. And I will say I was very driven and determined, but some mentors of mine, I love them. They're like second parents to me. Dr. K. Monk Morgan, who's CEO of Kansas Leadership Center, and and Derek Morgan, her husband, who works for the FAA. They were mentors and they still are, but she was the advisor for National Society of Black Engineers and, helped me as I became president of the chapter at Wichita State and other things. But my freshman year, right, I'm self-driven, I'm supported by my parents. They don't know anything about engineering, but they're like, hey, if you want to do this, go for it. We support you. We can't help you with the homework and any of that stuff, but we support you. And then I get to Wichita State and Dr. K. Mug Morgan is like, hey, you need to meet my husband. He's an aerospace engineer and he graduated from Wichita State. So we were at the Radigan Student Center parking lot, and I'll never forget this. She's like, Roy, come. They're getting ready to get in the car. So I walk up. He puts his hand out. And he's like, nice to meet you, Roy. My name is Derek. And in that moment, I was like, I believed that I could do this. Like I believed I could major in aerospace engineering and do it. But in that moment, I was like, I know I can do it now. I'm looking at a Black aerospace engineer. That was the first Black aerospace engineer I ever met in my life. And it really made a difference. So although there wasn't as many Black or brown students in engineering, specifically from the States, because Wichita State has a robust international group of students in engineering, which I loved. I loved because it brought the color to engineering. It really did. Like people from India, from Sri Lanka, from Mexico, from Nigeria, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Ghana. Like, so it, in a way, I didn't necessarily feel like I'm the only one, but there is a context in regards to being Black in America or Latino in America. So, interesting take on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said about that is just like when you see the representation of someone who looks like you and you can identify, like, you're like, okay, this can happen for me too. Although you don't see it often, but when you do actually see it, and that's what you're doing for all of these kids. Like you just got off tour. And like, again, congratulations. You're doing so much for these kids to get to see that I can do this too. Like, and you're giving them that resource when you do go. Is your stuff for free? Like, how does that work for the kids like wanting to do the STEM program?
Yeah, so I know you're referencing STEM Music, my small business that I jumped to do full time, and it's interesting you say that because I just did. So we still got a couple more dates on the tour, but I was just at Buckner Elementary School. It's a science and art magnet, which is so dope because that's what STEM Music is. That is science together, and so the principal there, shout out to Principal Hall. She is super supportive of me. She actually booked STEM Music at White Elementary back in 2020. It was the last show I did before the world shut down. So all these years later, doing 3 shows for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders there. And I had some time for question and answer at the end of each show. And this young Black girl said, why, why are you doing STEM music? Because they were kind of like, whoa, you quit your job? Like, in our community, what you mean you quit your job? Like, and
Yeah.
like, hey, she was in 4th grade. She understood, like, that's a big deal. Like, what do you mean? And so she asked the question, like, why are you doing STEM music? What is the point of it? And it was such a moment where I had to fight the tears because Buckner Elementary School is predominantly Black, predominantly Latino. So every kid in that audience looked like me and I looked like them. And to be able to tell her, well, I'm here because I'm trying to reach students just like you, that whether you want to go into science, technology, engineering, or math, which that's the STEM acronym, whether you want to go into STEM or not, I want to be able to let you know that you can do this if you decide you want to do this and you're hearing it from somebody who looks like you. And just seeing her kind of take that in, and the other students kind of take that in, that was such a moment for me because I just knew, like, in that moment, I am actually in my purpose. Like, this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. So you asked about how students can engage. And so a lot of times I am being booked at library systems, children's museums, then of course schools. And so a lot of times the children aren't necessarily having to do any of the paying, right? Because it's either the school district that's doing it or the children's museum. And then a lot of times libraries, it's free for students to be able to go and engage. And so we also have content on social media and my team. So I have 2 team members. Shout out to Julia and Taylor. And so we just met recently in an exec meeting and talked about how we want to expand on the social media aspect of things moving forward now that I have jumped from my corporate job. Because as you know, Kueen, it's all about that time and that limited resource of time. And so now trying to figure out how to do more with that so that students can engage. One of the kids at the show, we were talking about YouTube and stuff, and she's like, yeah, you need a show. You need to have a YouTube show for STEM music. And I'm like, okay, not the kids telling me like what, and you're hearing it straight from their mouths. It's not like some strategy or something like that. So we're definitely working as a team to try to figure out how to get more of the content out so that students can access it free,
Right. Yeah. And YouTube is where it's at. These kids are scrolling on YouTube and they're watching these adults play as like they're playing with the kids like through the TV. Like there's a lot of interaction that kids are learning.
We've actually did like in the pandemic because everybody was, because for the audience, and this is a good moment for the audience in the sense of if you're trying to do something and it's not working or you think something's going to die, sometimes it's meant to die and okay, move on. But do not underestimate the power of a pivot. In the pandemic, I just knew STEM music was going to die. Like I founded the company. It's an LLC filed with the state of Kansas, an actual business, not just saying it online and stuff. Did all the paperwork and everything, got the website. And that we launched November 1st, 2019. That's when STEM Music became STEM Music LLC. So we're coming up on
before 2020.
Right. And so I go into some schools. I do the White Elementary with Principal Hall in March. And the next week, the world shuts down. So I just knew if the big artists ain't touring and doing stuff, I ain't going to be doing nothing. And I just started. Nobody even knows what STEM Music is at this time. And so I kind of said, okay, we're going to sunset the company. We're going to shut it down. And next thing you know, a couple of organizations that I had reached out to where I was supposed to do in-person events, they pivoted to virtual for their little conferences and stuff like that. Can you write some songs for us? Can you shoot an in-apartment music video? It doesn't have to be professional. We just need something to get the kids engaged, right? And so I start engaging with it. And next thing you know, I'm performing just like I'm talking to you on my laptop right now to audiences across the country from my apartment with STEM music. And that was the power of the pivot there. And then, of course, when the world opened back up, started doing more shows. But in that, my small team, me and Julia, we and her husband, we went to different places like the Cosmosphere, the zoo in Kansas City. You have to wear masks, right? But then we'd be like, take the mask off and shoot something real quick. Like, oh, welcome to the Cosmosphere. And this is Kits and Rockets, Newton's third law. Okay, mask back on. And then we would shoot a music video at the end of it. And so we do have like some samples of what a show, could look like. And so, we're kind to, because to your point, like in those videos, I'd be like, all right, fill in the blanks. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right. And so we are having those conversations again of, okay, now that I'm in this capacity full time, one, trying to figure out the scheduling, but understanding the power of it. And a lot of people are like trying to get on YouTube or TikTok for viral moments or to have this big success. And I'd be lying if I said that isn't something that we desire, but it's deeper. It's kind of back to what you said, like, what does that mean for those students? And for it, it's like, this is deeper. Like, it lives forever when it's on the internet. And it's a resource for kids of color to look at and say, like, oh, I can engage with this stuff. Because 9 times out of 10, sometimes we're just afraid of it. I'm talking about, communities of color, Black, Latino, especially in America, right? When you are the only one at times, or you are not exposed. Sometimes it's just about the exposure of, like, I hate this topic or this subject. Next thing you know, you're exposed to it in a way that you resonate and relate, which is how STEM music started.
Right.
And then you want to engage with it.
Yeah. And I just want to point out something that you say a lot is do what you can with what you have right where you are. And I think that's what you did with STEM music when you do the pivot. Like, it's doing what you can with what you have right where you are. And that's exactly what you did. And that's why you are where you are right now. And you were able to fulfill that and quickly.
That so much. Y'all, if you're watching, I don't care what you're trying to do, because it's not even about trying to be this big successful person. It could be you're a parent and you're just trying to engage with your child. Like, it could be that simple. And that's why I love that concept. But if you could do what you can with what you have right where you are, maybe it's saying, hey, I want to connect with you more. And I know you're becoming a teenager and stuff, but can we have 5 minutes where you just tell me what's on your mind and I don't even respond, because I just want to hear what's on your mind, and with no judgment. Like, that is something so simple, right?
Yep.
But whatever you're trying to accomplish and pursue, a lot of times we get in a space where we're like, well, I don't have the money to do it, or I don't have the exposure, or I don't have the access. But you just be so surprised at what you can accomplish if you do focus on it. So yeah, I live by that phrase, and it's taken me far. I mean, people ask me to this day, like, I'm on a national tour right now. Who's your manager? Who's your booking agent? God? God, stuck in these streets, okay? And
you're doing this all by yourself? Like, this is
me and God. Taylor, my team member, is getting ready to pick up the booking side of things. Like, we're getting ready to test that out for him to kind of take that over starting in November of 2024. But up until this point, every single thing that I've not STEM music, gospel, R&B, national anthems, all of that, it is me and God. That's so awesome. It's like it really is living by that phrase, and just putting in the effort and understanding you may get a lot, not may, especially in entertainment, but in a lot of things, you're going to get a lot of no's. So if you can get to a point where you say, okay, that's a no, but it really is just not yet. It's coming, and just keep going.
All right, my mind's going to like multiple things that I can transition to right now, just off that statement that you just said, because you don't take the no or even not an answer for anything. Like, you just continue to go, make progress until it's like they're gonna have to either say no to your face or you're gonna keep trying. And what you did with the Common, the Riverfest,
man,
like, I think that needs to be told, just because when I was listening to that, I was like, that's wild. Like, you hear, like, people slide in people's DMs, they do it, but I want you to give the short version of the story of your comment.
To Kueen, though, y'all who watch it and subscribing to the podcast, she's doing her homework, okay? So these are stories that she took the time to listen. So I'm just trying to give you your flowers right now. I
appreciate that.
Subscribe to the podcast, you listen to it, support what she's doing. But yes, Common, the rapper out of Chicago, but he came to Riverfest in Wichita, Kansas, 2017. When I saw that announcement, I remember seeing him perform the song Glory with John Legend. Well, they made that song. They won an Oscar for that song and a Grammy and all this stuff. And he performed it with Yolanda Adams at the White House. I think the last time the Obamas, they were getting ready to get out of office, right? Unfortunately, with all that. But they hosted an event there where they were performing that song. When I saw Yolanda Adams sing with him, I said, because at the time I was really heavy in being a gospel artist. And so I'm like, sometimes as a gospel artist, you can feel very limited. Unfortunately, just the way the church or religion can kind of put constraints on what you can do or what you can't do. And I get the context of it. But anyway, I was inspired. And I was like, man, like, she kind of just blessed me, and I was able to be like, you can do more than what you think in this gospel genre. So he's coming to Wichita. I slide in the DMs on Twitter or somewhere, Twitter, maybe even Instagram, and said, hey, I see that you're coming to Wichita. If you happen to be performing the Glory song, I would love to sing that song with you because I know John Legend isn't going to be here, right? So also in this story is like doing your research, right? And knowing the context and understand. At the time, I was in Real Men, Real Heroes, which is a mentoring organization for young Black boys. It's called Heroes Academy, and I'm looking forward to re-engaging with that organization in the new year. But they had VIP passes for the boys. So the boys were going to be able to go meet him. And so they're like, we're looking for chaperones. So this is another thing, preparation and opportunity, and God, in my mind, God, in my life, God. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to meet him because I'm going to sign up as a chaperone. Oh, yes, I am. So me and my friend Taylor, who is on the STEM music team, we signed up as chaperones. We go. I told Taylor, I said, if I meet him, and I'm telling everybody at work too, by the way, if I meet him, I'm going to shoot my shot. Everybody's like, what? So we go in, we do the meet and greet. All the boys met him. We're about to take a picture. He comes, daps me up because he's greeting everybody. And I'm like, when we pulled back away from that dap up, I was like, hey, I know John Legend is not in town. If you happen to be doing the song Glory, I would love to sing it with you. That's exactly what I said. And he was like, word? Really? And that was kind of that moment when he said word, really, that blew me away because I was like, I can't believe he's even entertaining this. And right at that moment, they were like, group picture, right? So we left and everybody got in the group, took the picture. When the picture finished, he came back to me and he said, were you serious about that? I said, yeah. He was like, you can sing? I said, yeah. He was like, then he started looking at the boys and he turned to them. He said, hey, yo, he can sing? I was like, one day. When the glory comes, it'll be ours. It will be ours. Oh, glory. Like it was that moment. I was like, nah, I'm singing right now. He was like,
oh, that's right.
Okay. And got to his road manager. And then this is where I told a lie, but I said, God, you got to forgive me. Because he was like, you know the bridge of the song? And I said, yeah. And I was like, I did not know the bridge. I did not know the bridge. And in my mind, I remember saying, God, forgive me. But I was like, yeah, thank God he didn't ask me to sing it on the spot right there. So he said, give him my road manager. Boom. Okay. So that, and meanwhile, all the other chaperones are like, something's happening because they all know me as a singer and everybody's trying to ask. And I'm like, no, I got to focus. I got to learn this bridge. So I told my friend Taylor, I said, hey, I may have a chance to perform with him. He said, what? By the way, Common is like one of his favorite rappers. So he's having a whole moment himself. And I'm like, rehearse this thing. Can you watch the kid? He's like, yeah, okay. So I'm in the back. I learned the bridge. Then I get called up to the dressing room, which was in Century 2. And so this was such a wild moment because Common is up there. First of all, Cleveland Cavaliers and Golden State are playing in the NBA Finals. I told you my family's from Ohio, so I'm a huge Cleveland fan. And so I'm arguing with Common about who's going to win the game that night. Like, what is that? Arguing with Common.
And this is before they even said that you're going to perform.
Yeah.
This is they just invited you back there.
They invited me because they wanted to know. Well, they wanted to see if I could sing the bridge. I knew that was the test. So I was like, you got to learn this bridge. So I get up there. We're arguing. Then he starts asking me about Wichita. I'm a transplant to Wichita. I know more things now. Or this was 2017. And so he's like, tell me about Wichita. I'm like, what is going on? I said, Riverfest is one of the biggest events. Kellogg is a major highway in which, so I'm just
give it.
Grove is the Black community. I'm just trying to pull Wichita State, shockers. That I'm a rap Wichita State. That's a big thing in the community. And I didn't know what he was doing that for, but in the show, he does a freestyle. I'm pretty sure every show. And so he used what I gave him in a freestyle. Okay. Somebody on stage and I was like, oh my God. It was so crazy, how he did that. But then after all that, then he's like, okay, I need you to sing through the bridge one time with my MD. Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish. Then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, okay. That was me.
I know that's right.
True. And they actually, I don't know if it's still on his Instagram, but when they posted about the show in Wichita, it was a picture of him. And then you swiped, and I was singing in the Century 2 to him. They had put me on his Instagram page the day after, which was crazy. So, yes. Okay, cool. You're singing. Right before I left, the MD, the musical director, says, listen, we may run out of time. So at the DJ solo, that's your cue to come backstage, but we may run out of time. So you talk about being so excited that they said yes, but the last thing you hear is we may run out of time. So I said, man, God, you got me this far. So instead of freaking out, I'm just going to say your will, your way. Like if it's supposed to happen, it's supposed to. But I was like, God, come on. Next thing you know, so I get the set list and I tell Taylor, I said, Taylor, this is the set list. He's freaking out because he's like, this is a set list from Common. Like, this is just like one of his favorite rappers. So he's like walking me. It was so dope because he's walking me through all the songs because he knows all the songs. I wasn't as familiar with his catalog. So he's like, he's at this song. He's at this song. So the DJ solo came. I gave him the script. I went backstage. I'm fighting with a guy backstage to get on the stage. Like, inches from the moment. And I'm fighting with him. They gave me a badge, so I even had a badge. And he's like, finally the MD looks back and he sees me. And he's like, let him up. And then the last words I heard was, mic him up. I was like, oh my gosh. He's like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome my friend Roy. I said, friend, what? And then I started, one day when the glory comes. And when I tell you, I have chills right now. Because when I think about that moment, it was just so cool because one, you talk about trying to be an example for the next generation. All my young Black boys, because I was the third or fourth grade in Real Men, Real Heroes at the time. We met every Monday night throughout the school year. And they're all in the front row. They're all in the front row of this concert. There's hundreds of people, maybe even 1,000, but hundreds of people all the way back, right, in Riverfest. And it was so crazy because I started singing and I started walking out. Clearly he said my name, Roy. And all I heard in the audience was, Roy? Like people are going through their mind. The only Roy we know who singing is Roy Moye III, you know? And then it was just roar of like, it's like, and I'm just singing, you know? And it was a phenomenal, and the energy between us was incredible too. Like he trusted me. That was another thing too. It's like I wasn't like in the background singing. Like at that moment, I was his equal in regards to how he set the stage. And I messed up. Not a lot of people know this. I messed up because I was so nervous. Of course, this is a huge moment. I started singing too early. Like as soon as I started walking out, I was like, one day when I was nervous. And the track, so he had an actual instrumental track and the band, but a track that was playing. So when I stopped singing, he started hands to the heavens, no form, no weapon. And then you heard glory. So the track vocals were, because I had started too early. And you can look in the video. He goes like this, like to shut the track off. And that meant that we were going live, just band only, no backing vocals. And it just was this incredible moment of, I mean, it was, and at the end, I even said like, we give God the glory. That just naturally came out of me. And he was like, give what? Say what? Because he's very much big about God and like, you know, and so it was an amazing moment. We kind of dapped up at the end and that was it. Everybody asked the question, did he ask you to come on tour? Did he this? Yeah. Never heard from him to this day.
That was just a blessing that you had and to put on the resume, like to say that you did that like at Riverfest.
Real God part of me, right? So it was a God moment that the Real Men Real Heroes had the tickets to go see. But the real God moment is once he was like, okay, get with my MD. He said, you know what's crazy? This was like right when I was meeting him. You know what's crazy about you asking to sing? I said, what? He said, my background singer who usually sings this song for me, she had to go to her daughter's kindergarten graduation today. So like, he usually got a singer who does that. So it really wasn't a moment. It was all about timing. And when I was done, so okay, that was the last song in the set. So I'm like, I'm closing out his set with him. Get backstage. He goes back into Century 2. And I go back behind the stage with the VIP area and I just start like, I'm on my knees crying. And here come all the kids dogpiling. I mean, that is one of the greatest moments. It was so, so amazing. Then we got back on the bus to head back to Wichita State. And Chance the Rapper, first of all, I'm like, who picked this music out for these kids on this bus? But this moment will forever live in it was one of the greatest moments is Chance the Rapper, you don't want no problem with me. And, you know, all the kids know the song. Yeah. So we us just going off. Like, and it was just the greatest moment of celebration after a huge moment with my kids just vibing. Yeah. It was quite the moment.
And them sing, like, again, just the representation that you're giving these kids, like, they came with you And like I watching the video, they were looking at you like, "Are you a celebrity?" Like they didn't know like what to think of you after that. Like,
Because it's like, oh, we've heard him sing before, stuff like that. But it is a different level when you're on a stage with someone. And I was so proud of myself that night because, you know, I've been raised to be humble, and I want to be humble because I know this is not mine. This is God's gift. I'm very clear on that. But at the same time, I really know what I'm capable of. And so it's just one of those moments where I was like, no, 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 no. I dreamt of this moment for so long, and I knew I could meet the moment, but I just needed the opportunity. And so, man, it was phenomenal experience, phenomenal. And here's the
definitely.
to the audience, right? That happened in 2017. We're in 2024. I still believe Common and I will collaborate again, but it's all about timing. And so
Definitely timing.
I'm like, is it gonna? It's like, no, it'll happen. I believe it. It'll happen.
And that's not the only opportunity that you've had. Like with the music, you were on the Sunday's Best in
Yeah.
2019, which that's was that like during the like right before COVID? So like it didn't air. Like did it air or like what
Yeah,
was?
it aired. It aired June 30th, I want to say, of 2019. I think the last Sunday in June.
And you made the
Yeah,
top 20.
huh?
So I said, and you made the top 20. So like,
Made the top 20. Incredible. Yeah, what an experience. That was it. Met Kirk Franklin. Of course, the judges that year were Erica Campbell, Mary, Jonathan McReynolds, which I had opened up for him at a NSBE conference, National Society of Black Engineers conference in 2016,
that's
which was
so.
crazy. And then Kelly Price was the other judge. Yeah.
What was so like obviously this is Queen Talk, coming out stories or whatever. So you weren't out in this journey of all of this stuff in your life at this point. So like the Sunday's Best, all this like this your journey starts after that. But during like this did growing up and during this time, did you know like you were a part of the community?
Yeah, I knew I was gay from a very young age. And but when you grow up, like many of us, and many people who could probably relate out there watching, you are almost shunned to not explore that, talk about that. Well, of course, when you're in Christian culture, I mean, it's like you do not like, no, you need to pray the gay away. You need to. And so it was a very hard journey. And that's kind of how music found me is using the power of music, being bullied in middle school, being bullied in high school, which, my parents didn't even know about that. Right. Cause I'm like, who am I going to tell? Why are they bullying you? What am I going to tell them? Right. So I held all of that inside and, shout out to my sister. She's a year older than me. If she heard of people doing that or whatever, she would get on them or she would stop it in the middle of them, calling me, and sorry for the language, but just to be transparent, calling me a faggot or calling me other names, like that really did happen to me, but nobody knew that was happening because I wasn't telling anybody. And so in high school specifically is where my relationship with God, I think was solidified because, we lived 15-minute walk from the high school. I didn't have a car until like my junior year of college. So I'd walk home from practice, track practice, cross country or football, the 2 short years I played it. And that 15-minute walk is me just talking with God of like, how am I going to survive this next day? Or how am I going to, oh my God, I know this is coming up or whatever. And I'm going to have to face these people again. Like, how am I going to do it? And out of that, then started songwriting. The very first kind of real song I wrote was like, the only one when you are falling down, he will pick you up. The only one who can fix anything. The only one who has control of the universe, the only one, the God that can set you free. And that literally started from me walking home. And I
Is
and,
that
and
on your Coming Back EP?
no, what's interesting is that started everything, and I wrote 40 songs in high school that are not recorded. They're literally just on notebook pieces of paper. But what was happening was part of it was trying to pray the gay away, right? Like I need to get closer to God so that this can get snuffed out of me. But the other part of it was just comforting. Like it just was comforting. And so I would do my homework and then I would go into the basement where I used to live down there and then it flooded. And so then I ended up sharing a room with my brother. But I would go down there and that was kind of like my creative space. And I would write the songs. It's actually like amazing, started from the bottom, now we're here / being a manifestation stuff in that room. I would write all those songs, and then each year I would take a white piece of paper, like printer paper, and cut it into a rectangle, fold it in half so it's two squares, front and back, and I would draw the front cover of the album and the back cover of the album with the songs. And then I would go on national tour by taping a piece of paper to the wall that said Phoenix, and I would sing to the wall, reach out to touch the fans' hand, and then I would change this. Now I'm in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Now I'm in Dublin, Ireland, and be like this huge tour. Every single year of high school, I did that. I'd be writing songs for a new album, draw the front and back cover, then go on tour. And so
you were prepping yourself from young.
To be on a national tour right now. Like, what? Like, we saw this before, and nobody knew about this. Nobody knew this was happening. So anyway, I used those songs. They were such a comfort to me, and it did what it needed to do at that time to get through what I had to go through. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you were going through this transition of your life of being like open and authentic to your true self, you said, I seen in a video where it was like your coming out video. It was very short, 3 minutes long. And you wanted to make it clear, yes, I'm still a believer. Yes, I still believe in God. And I think people have a hard time believing that both can coexist. And I think
I have a hard time. Some days I still have a hard time. So I am those people. That's the other thing. People, a lot of times kids or people who are out, and living authentically in their gay or part of the LGBTQ plus community. A lot of times they had a moment in their teens where they were like, screw my parents, or I'm this or whatever. And maybe they didn't fully embrace it, but they had a moment. I never had that moment. It wasn't until I was 27 years old that I'm like coming to terms with like, oh, this is who you are. And that was because of the pandemic. We was all locked up in our apartment. Everybody had to face their real self in that panorama. Okay.
Yo.
And it was your full panorama. Bam, that's some things you need to address. And so, yeah, it definitely did a number on me, but I never had that moment. Yes, like I was getting bullied. People would always ask me about it in college, even, is he gay, or, that sort of thing.
You just always just said no.
I mean, I was defiant about that is not right. There's no way. And like I said, I knew all along from like my earliest memory is kindergarten. I want to say yes. And this is such a funny story, but kindergarten, and I verified this with my mom too. I can't remember the girl's name, but maybe I shouldn't be saying their name. I don't know them. I was in Washington State in kindergarten, and then we moved to Missouri. So it was such a long time ago, but I got invited to her birthday party, and I'm 5. Okay. Everyone in the audience, 5. Okay. I'm 5 years old. And we go to the birthday party, and I'm gonna say the names just because I need to, and I don't know these people. Like I couldn't even reach out to them. But her name was Candace. Yeah, Candace. And she's, we're hanging out or whatever. We're just kids, like having a good time. And then it came to a point where she wanted to kiss me. I verified this with my mom because I remember this moment so clearly. And like she's kind of like coming in for this kiss, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I mean, okay, like I'm a kid, like. But, my mom comes running in like, oh, like, bring it up. And meanwhile, little Roy is like, where's Mario at? Like, Mario, he used to wear a Mariners jersey. Oh, my God. So, I'm 5 years old, like having this. So I knew from a very young age. But it's just like, this is not right. You cannot be this way. Of course, then when you dive into being a gospel artist in 2016, I kind of recommitted my life to Christ at that time. And yeah, it got deeper, of course, started making this music, gospel music, and leading praise and worship and all of these different things. And so I never allowed myself to even go, because like I said, a lot of times, either when people are teenagers or fresh into their 20s, 20, 21, where they're going to explore, they're going to say, buck the system. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I never, even in my mind, I would be like, oh, he's fine. But I wouldn't be like, what would that be like to be? It was so strict in here, so strict. And the pandemic is kind of there were some other things going on.
I was going to ask, like, what happened during the pandemic? Yeah, we're sitting there by ourselves, but like, what happened to where you're like, okay, I can't keep doing this to myself. Like, I got to do.
I think it had just been bubbling up, and Sunday Best, interestingly, I made it to the top 20. Of course, I didn't think I could win the show. but I thought I could get top 5. I really did. I think my song selection could have been different. Also, I could have sang it a different way. Of course, you learn all these things, hindsight 2020. But I was kind of grateful because I was at Sunday Best, and in my mind, in my heart, I was like, my God, but if you do get up that far, then what happens if something happens and you're exposed and, you're gay in the Black gospel community? I mean, there was that in the back of my mind. It was a little
But no
nerve-wracking.
one knew though, did they? Like you hadn't told
No,
anyone.
no
Yeah.
one knew, but everybody knew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hadn't told nobody. But everybody in my life, most of the people in my life kind of figured from when I was young to college to even doing praise and worship. Like people were like, ain't nobody was going on. And so I, at the time, and I won't name anybody in this just for privacy reasons, but at the time I had a friend, and there were some feelings there, but nothing happened. Nothing happened because remember the strictness up here, like this is not right. But I started to actually allow myself to envision, what would this be like if this person and you were together and all this stuff. So I did start to allow myself to just have those thoughts for the first time ever in life because we were so close. And at a certain point before the pandemic, or right when the pandemic was starting, they ended up telling me, or we had actually shared like, what are your struggles, right? Like, what are your struggles? What are you wrestling with? And so I actually shared with that person and a couple other folks that like, I'm struggling with homosexuality. Like and that was the first time like actually saying those words out loud. So maybe a year later or something like that, like I think it was the week before like the world shut down. He was like, yeah, I might be struggling with the same thing. And when I tell you, it was like a mirror just held up to me. It hit me so hard in my chest and just like, because I think I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, here I am like finally letting myself have these thoughts about this person and they are the same as me. Like, oh my, so like part of me was grieving like a loss of like, because this person is going to move on with their life. But the other part was like, oh my gosh, you actually have to look into this. You have to address this. You have to face it. And that was the catalyst. Because I guess I just wasn't believing that person could be gay. Like it's just not a thing. And so it shocked me. It kind of like, now looking back, I'm like, oh no, that kind of makes sense. Like it all makes sense now. But like in the moment, because of the strictness in my mind of like, no, this and this and that. And so, yeah, it got dark really quick. It got dark very, very quick at that time.
And I want to like dive into that a little bit if you don't mind, just like
Sure.
what that did look like for you, because there's a lot of people still struggling with what you're like right now with being a part of the Christian community and having that faith and believing that, but just like also just like having this dynamic. So when you were in that moment, in that dark space, like what did that look like for you? Or like what was that experience for you?
Yeah, it got, like I said, it got very dark, and I'm happy to share, just because it's making me emotional just thinking about it right now, because I know what it feels like, and not only that, I was kind of positioned, especially after Sunday Best, like as in this community, as like the person to look up to in the sense of like who's doing it right, who's following God, who's all this stuff, and so I felt pressure in that way of like, there's no way you could ever fully address this. And so I did end up telling my family, I think it was around April. So I told my good friend first, I want to say, and she has been incredible in this whole journey. I sensed that. I sensed I was safe telling her that. My sister, actually, I had told, when I was talking about how I told that person that I was referencing and another couple other people that I was struggling with homosexuality, I actually had told my sister first at that time. And shout out to my sister. She's so funny. She's always been like, buck the system, skip the rules and all that stuff. She was very loving. And I think she even asked, like, when I told her, because I went to, like, I was in Raytown. I was like, I want to do this in the house. So we went to a park up the street, and I was like, struggling with homosexuality. And I love my sister so much. The first thing she said was, well, have you thought about dating a guy? And I was like, no, you can't say that. I mean, at the time, I'm telling you, I was very, very strict. I think that was 2019, probably 2019. Yeah, because it was like the year prior. And I was like, you can't say that. You can't, no, And so she had known. And so then I reached out to her again. And then eventually, I actually wasn't planning to tell my parents because I knew my mom knew, but my dad, right? Like he very much in ministry and all of that stuff. And I know his stance on all of that. So I was, but it just, in a weird way, it just kind of came out. And I'm a talker, as everybody's experiencing on this podcast. So I couldn't really hold it in. But I presented it as I was struggling. I did not present it as I'm gay. And that actually was the right terminology, because at that time I was struggling. Right. Like, I don't know if I can actually be this way or embrace this way or whatever. And so I did tell them, like I said, told my friend, told some other friends too. But it got really dark because God is my best friend. Like that, my relationship with God, although not perfect, he was, it gets me emotional because I really love God that much. Because he loves me that much. In high school, when I just didn't think, there were certain times and moments where I just didn't think I was going to make it through. And he would just do these little things that would give me enough to keep going. And of course, the power of my voice. Once I started singing in like middle school, the bullies would, he's going to get all the girls. It became that. And so I was like, I'm about to sing more. It wasn't until February 2021 where I realized I had to make a separation of like, yes, you enjoy singing and stuff like that, but you also used it as a shield. So we need to kind of like dissect that so we're not so connected to music and singing and because you use it as a defense mechanism. But I believe God provided that for me in that time because it did keep the bullies away. It did keep, guys, saying like, oh, no, we want to either support him or lay off him because he's going to get the girls, right? Meanwhile, I'm like, ain't nobody looking at no girls. So, but I love God so much because that relationship was cemented with all those songs, over 40 songs in high school. And it was just me and God on those walks. But I got to this point where I'm like, God, I don't want you to, like, I know you're all knowing and all seeing. I'm not delusional, but I feel like I can't talk to you now because, like I've never been in that place in my life before where I'm like, I can't talk to you, God, because I want to explore this. I've never in my life been like, I'm going to just explore and see who I am. Like, and I want to do that now, but I don't want you to see me do it. Even though I know you're going to see everything. And so I'm going to withdraw from talking to you. And it makes me so emotional because literally the hand of God and the presence of God, the Holy Spirit, which I now know is the Holy Spirit, has been in my life since I was 5, since I was 6. There are just certain things in my life where everyone was doing it, and I just heard this voice say, you ain't gonna do it. Not just because of my parents. I've just had this close connection with God since I was young. So there's never been a day that I've lived where I wasn't talking to God. And so in April of 2020, it's like, I was like, well, I'm gonna just not talk to you because I can't imagine you watching me go through. And I wasn't doing anything, but just even me thinking about being gay, like that was really, really hard to be like, I'm going to let God watch this, even though I knew he was seeing it. And so I told God, I said, I can't even pray right now, but protect me. That was the only thing. The only words I could say was protect me. And he did through all of it. But it was so dark because I didn't know life without God, without talking to God. Like, and when I say talking to God, like, I talk to God like how I talk to Queen right now. Every day. Like I'm going through a green light. Jesus, hold them cars at that red light. Because you don't know somebody, right? Like it's a daily conversation. Lord, help me. Oh, God, forgive me. I was wilding out a little bit, whatever. It's a daily conversation that is so real in my life. And so that was very, very hard. And to your point of the question you asked about the gospel or Christian community, and I mean, that was the hardest part. It wasn't even necessarily like, oh, I'm gay and I like guys. And it was more of this, like, I have been the standard. And maybe some of that is even me putting that pressure on myself. And musically, in my music career, I had just gained all these followers and all these supporters, mainly from my gospel music career. Like, yes, I did
Right.
R 2015 and before, but the predominant me being on the scene as a music artist was gospel. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And also, like, how do you grapple with scripture? How do you grapple with, is this right? Is this, okay? And so it was a very dark journey of just feeling alone, feeling like nobody understood what was going on, specifically with the gospel context. Because yes, there are people who go through a journey of coming out or figuring out who they are, but they're not in this context of the Christian community, and not just in the Christian community, but
You were
lead
in it. You were leading it.
on ministry, praise and worship, all of that, putting out music. Um, so yeah, very, very challenging time.
Have you come to like a better place? Like you've mentioned God and your faith a lot throughout this podcast. So now, a couple years later, have you come to a time now to coexist with both, or what does that look like for you now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Because yeah, people watching right now are probably like, well, is there a possibility to have this? One thing I will say about me and my life, and I said it in my coming out video, I can't do life without God. That's just, I don't care what anybody's thinking or how they're viewing. And also, I turned 32 this past summer, and 32 did something to me where I'm just like, look, you either love me or you hate me, or. But I'm rocking out with God. Like, there's no life without God for me. And so, actually, shout out to a good friend of mine. June of that year, 2020, I reached out and was like, hey, can I come over? He's a part of the community as well, LGBTQ plus community. I said, can I come over and just talk? Because I feel like everyone, even friends who supported me, they weren't gay or they weren't in the LGBTQ. So I wanted that understanding and somebody to really understand what I was going through. And man, God bless that man. He ended up inviting me over. I spent 5 hours on his couch just talking, crying. He was sharing stories, and he fed me. It really reminds me of like biblical stuff, like maybe, the least of these, fed me, clothed me, all this stuff. And that was a moment that, because I think I was at my lowest of lows at that point. And that was a moment where someone saw me, someone cared for me, and allowed me to move forward in life and take steps forward. So then I, kind of in July of that year, because my birthday's in July, I went to Colorado. I needed to get out, just in nature and stuff like that. And I love Colorado because of that trip. But I kind of came back and said, okay, God, I'm just kidding. I'm not gay. Like, it's over. It's da-da-da-da, right? And so then, okay, the relationship picks up again with God. But then it was like November of that year, I want to say. I was driving back to my apartment, and I call it the road to Damascus, because, when the eyes were, uncovered from being blinded. And basically for me, it was like, okay, I actually don't know the answer. I feel like I'm faking it if I'm saying, I'm just kidding, God, I'm not gay, I'm not going to do it. That's too quick of a solution, and it's not the truth. But at the same time, I can't do life without God. So November 2020 was a moment in my life, driving back home, and I was like, it's over, devil. You're done. You're done. I don't know how God feels about all this or whatever, but I am going to have a relationship with God regardless of what happens moving forward. And that was kind of the moment of going on the journey back to a place of my Lord time in the morning, of, just getting back to a relationship. And even to this day, diving more into the scriptures surrounding homosexuality and all the different things. And, what is the Greek? What's the interpretations? All these different things. I did go on that journey, and getting to a place of like, I was driving to Kansas City to sing the national anthem for the Royals. And this was 2021. And I was not just singing the national anthem, I was singing the Black national anthem as well. So both. And it was a very historic thing. That was the first time that ever happened in Kauffman Stadium. I was so honored. And I remember like having that moment and God just telling me, like, just be present. Whatever you do, be present in that moment and enjoy it. And I did for the first time, because I had sung national anthems there before, but it's all like, who's going to see me in the audience? Who's going to sign me? Who's going to, all this stuff. And it's like, just enjoy the moment. And so I did. And on that drive home, the Flint Hills, I always say that's my God time. I don't always talk to God in the Flint Hills, but a lot of times that's where when I'm driving back and forth from Kansas City to Wichita, Flint Hills is It's a special spot. And I remember just saying, God, I don't know if it's okay that I'm supposed to be gay or that I could be gay or whatever. I said, but I refuse to do life without you. And we just gonna thug it out together. Like that was kind of a real. So November 2020 was the inception of that. But June of 2021, driving back from that experience, is when I said that. And I can't. God knows me as my witness, and still to this day, I am not a person who the leaves just fell from the tree, so that means that God is saying money's gonna fall. I am not one of those people. People get all, I do believe in wonders. I do believe that God will give you a sign, but I'm not like going that far out. But I kid you not, and God knows as my witness. As soon as I said, like, as I'm praying, I'm like, and it was an overcast day, it was sprinkling a little bit. I said, God, it's me and you till the wheels fall off. I will never, ever get to a point where I say, I can't talk to you, because that was way too dark and I just won't do it. And I don't know what the answer is, but I love you. I'm gay. This is just what it is. Queen, I looked out the window and it was a double rainbow. And I was like, what? And so then I'm like, okay, don't overthink it. Like the rainbow came with Noah. So let's not overthink. Before the LGBTQ, community had it Noah saw the rainbow, so I was trying not to overthink it. But what I left with was, you heard me, you saw me, and that is what those rainbows represent. And that is going to be okay. And that I love you just as you are. And we going to thug this thing out till the wheels fall off. So yeah, I couldn't believe that. To this day, I'm like, that was crazy. I was like, same amen, rainbow. Double rainbow. Crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just want to thank you for sharing that with me. I know you put yourself in a vulnerable spot, like back into that space. So thank you for that. I know a lot of people deal with this topic, especially with the queer people of color community. And I just want to give a plug. There's a podcast by Anna Deshawn, and it's for queer people of color who are also a part of the Christian community, and then they just talk about all of this, talk about faith. So there is a lot of us out here who are still believers, and just figuring that out, because as we grow up, we are told constantly just it complete opposite of just what it's against. And so I hear you, I'm with you, and I
want to say too, shout out to her for that podcast, but I want to say to the audience, I do meet a lot of gay people or LGBTQ community members, who will say yeah, I did have a connection with God, but I just don't know how to get back to that with all the things going on. And I truly, right, we all have context of how we have been treated historically. And so I just want to tell people out there, if you want to have that relationship with God, it is there to be had. And he loves you so much. And it really starts with just a conversation. And it's not necessarily, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy. I mean, that's great if you have the terminology, awesome. But don't let that be the barrier to relaunching that relationship with Jesus. He really, I'm telling you, he responds to our regular English or to even slang or whatever. It's all about just opening that conversation of, it can literally just be, hey, God, I was watching this podcast and I do miss you. And I don't know how we gonna connect and all that, but I want a relationship again. How do we do this? That could be the exact words. It doesn't have to be our Father, okay, in Scripture, Matthew,
right. Just take the step for sure.
Yeah, it's you as you are right now. So yeah, I'm passionate about that. And sometimes I think what you're doing, God, is there something down the road that, because I do meet a lot of LGBTQ plus people and I can't help but share my faith because it just oozes out of me. I love God. And this is a story for another podcast, but I grew up in a cult church. So my relationship with God is how in the world, how do I still have a relationship? Cult church, LGBTQ, ridiculed, ministry and all this stuff. And I still, to me, that's why God is amazing. Because I'm I, of all people, should not believe in God. I should not have a relationship. I'm gay, grew up in a cult church, had these crazy experiences growing up, and here I am still with a strong relationship, someone who just is the Lord over my life and guides me and leads me, and all the things that everybody sees on social media and everybody sees me post, my God is great with all the exclamation points. It's like, no, those are real. It's not a gimmick, because everything that you guys see me posting about, I'm going to do a concert here or singing here or this opportunity, speaking at South by Southwest EDU. These are all, like I said, I don't have a manager. I don't have a booking agent. This is me and God. So I give the credit where the credit is due. I know it is not me. Yes, I got to put in the work, but God is the one that is breaking down these doors and opening up these opportunities. And I don't take that lightly. I know that it is him moving in my life.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I definitely just like wanted your story too, to get you on here, just because it's fresh too. Like this is new for you. Like this is
I'm 27, I'm 32. Like
yeah,
that's what people meeting me, and I'm like, no, y'all, I'm new to this. I'm new
yeah.
to this.
And so how besides like the faith wise, how has the other transition of things been for you in your life and your journey
Yeah,
on that?
yeah. So got back with Jesus, so we good, we cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, then I started to get out there and started to date probably in 2021, getting on the dating apps, which good luck everybody, because the streets is not for me, because I don't subscribe to, and it's not just the LGBTQ community, because I know a lot of times there's a stigma that, it's like, oh, what people's of the same sex, heterosexuals doing the same stuff. Okay. So it's just wild out in the streets, period. But
Yeah.
got on some dating apps, and that wasn't a journey, an experience, and it was exciting, because it was like, I never even let myself think about it. So
Right.
then to dating apps, and like, it was funny. My name is Roy Moye III. I used to use my middle name because I was so scared. Like, so I'd be on there as Nelson. It'd be pictures of me, but I'd be on there as Nelson. I didn't want to. It was very, I was nervous, and so went on. And sometimes on them dating apps, you just meet crazy. I don't want to say crazy, but like individuals
No, they
that
crazy. They crazy. They
they
crazy.
same morals or upbringing, or and I'm trying to not offend anybody, but I'm just gonna be real. Look, I was like on a dating app, and I went to Colorado, and so one thing I used to do is always change my locations, like on work trips or whatever, and like, oh, I'll go have coffee with somebody or go meet up with somebody. And then of course last year, ended up getting into a relationship in 2023, my very first boyfriend, and that was wow. Yeah, that was a whole journey of like, I could not believe that was real, that was really happening in my life. And so, we went, it wasn't too long of a relationship. But we did go on a journey, and I think it was good for me just to get out there. And, of course, my mindset at the time was like, oh, this could be a forever thing, because that's how you enter
Boy.
relationships. Like, well, at least me, I'm not
Yeah.
into relationships like, oh, let me just try this out and see.
Yeah.
And so, went on that journey, learned a lot about myself. I mean,
Yeah.
it ain't nothing like that mirror being held up to your face, showing like all the things that are wrong with me. And it just got to a point where it was like, I don't think this is the best for me, like the best situation for me, and decided to end that relationship and move on. But I will say, like, props to him, because I think there was so many things that I got to experience for the first time, and just learning about myself and learning what it means to be in a same-sex relationship that I never thought I would ever have a chance to be in. Wish him all the best and everything like that. But I think for me, it also ironed out what the non-negotiables are and what it is that I do want in a relationship. Because once again, I'm 32 now, but at the time in that relationship, I was 31. I used to tell people all the time, yes, I'm a 31 grown man, but in my love life, I am 13 years old, because I never the high school sweetheart, or the when everybody was crushing on their person in middle school and having those puppy loves, like that phase of my life did not happen. I did have a couple of girlfriends. I think maybe one in high school, and then one in college, and then another one briefly. But inside information for Kueen Talk. But it was not, and that was the other thing about being in that relationship with a guy for the first time, was like, oh wow, like this is what it feels like. Just feelings, just feelings in general of like being crushing on someone or what. I didn't get to experience any. Of course, I had crushes and stuff, but I didn't I never engaged. I never even let myself think that far, all of that stuff. So it
Right.
was quite the experience. So, but it definitely, the biggest takeaway for me was like, one, I have to do work on myself. So like I
Definitely. Like
got back into therapy. Yeah.
you just started experiencing it. You just started dating. That's when you're like, yeah, I thought this was going to be my forever. Like, you just got out here. Like, how do you already
Yes.
know? Like,
That's not, by the way, that's not a gay trait. That's a trait of me loving love. So that's another thing that I've, all the love bombing when you're like, oh, this person is that is so my personality. I'm a Cancer. I love love. I love, all emotional and all that stuff. So it's another thing I had to come out and learn. Like, you just met a person. How you gonna say this person's gonna be the person you live the rest of? But that's where I was at the time. So it pushed me to get back in therapy, because I will say, in that 2020 period of crisis, I did actually start going to therapy. That was my very first time in life going to therapy, because I needed that during that crisis, and I'm grateful for it. But then I had taken a break, and so I, got back into therapy and really just started doing work on myself of how do I want to show up in a relationship, and then also what are my non-negotiables? Like, what do I need? Y'all hear me talking about God and stuff. I need someone who is very much about it when it comes to God. Like, that's just very important. And I know that means I'm looking for a needle in a haystack at points, because there is a strained relationship with the LGBTQ plus community and church and religion, Christianity. So, but just lining those things out and then saying like, okay, God, like, just like I trusted you with everything else, I'm going to trust you with this as well. And just do the work. Actually, February of this year, this kind of is an example of like how me and God operate in my life. He'd be telling me stuff that I need to do that I don't want to do. So that's the other thing too, audience. It's not about like, oh, Roy loves God and he just has this perfect life. No, I'll be fighting with him. I'll be like, no, I don't want to do that. He'd be like, all right, boy, you do whatever you want to do, but just know there's consequences for different things, and there's blessings for others. And so February of this year, I had gone to a conference with my company, and so not on work time. Let's get it straight, not on work time, but work hard, play hard. And so after the conference over, meeting up with somebody, I changed the location on the Hinge app again and met up with somebody, and I remember that person said something on that date, and he was like, well, I know what I want, and that's what I'm looking for, a husband or something like that. And as I was sitting across from him, I had this internal moment of like, not you, like, that's supposed to be you. Like, he's saying what you typically would be like. So it was this whole moment, and the Holy Spirit in that moment was like, yeah, we're going to talk later. And when I got back to my hotel, he was like, I do not want you dating until 2025. This is February of this year. And I'm like, we got summer, hot boy summer. No, I'm just kidding. But we got summer coming up. We got, fall cuffing season, all this stuff. I'm like, what? But it was so loud and clear. Like, you need to do work on yourself. You need to chill out. You need to stop traveling and changing your Hinge location everywhere, because once again, I'm new to this. I'm excited. I'm all, trying to, and begrudgingly. So I, want the audience to know it's not always like, oh, I just do everything perfect. But begrudgingly, I said, okay, God, I'll delete the Hinge app, delete this other app, I'll delete this other, and I will just not date until 2025. Kind of had this attitude. But then as the months kept going on, I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad that you commanded that of me, because I've been able to work on myself. I've been able to get to a better place. My priorities are very clear in what I want in a person. And now I only got 2 months left. Hey, look, see the money.
Right. I think that's good too, having that time and space to figure things out for yourself. Like I said, this is fresh. So I mean, I've come out since I was like 18 years old, like senior of high school. But I think just like you said, 32 does something for you. Like I think it was 30s. Like the 30s, I was just like things were just starting to change. Like feel like that was the age. Okay, I'm an adult. Like
Yeah, yeah.
30 was like, okay, you grown now. So you need to figure it out. And I was just like, I learned a lot of different things about myself, whether it's tapping more into my feminine side or just doing things that I don't know, I'm not scared to do like anymore that I was in my 20s. So I think just things change and it's good to grow just solo and not with someone else. especially like during your journey when you're really just trying to figure it out, what you want in a man too. So I
And
think
it, and
that's
it
good
doesn't
for you.
mean that you don't go on that journey without experiencing the hard feelings. So I don't want to omit that part from the journey too. So throughout this year, I have been mourning. I've been grieving like,
Mm.
oh, I miss this person. It's like, well, you actually don't miss the person. You miss having a person and the things that come with the relationship. Oh, everybody's in a relationship. I want to be in a relationship. Like all them things, y'all, was going on and have been going on throughout this year. But it has been just a steadfast commitment to knowing, I guess really what it all comes to is my relationship with God in the sense of knowing what the history has shown. Because I wanted to quit my engineering job in 2020 and move to Atlanta and do STEM outreach at Georgia Tech and pursue music in Atlanta because this is major city of entertainment and stuff and Black, of course, and all of that. And God was like, no, do you trust me enough not to apply to that position? And that offended the mess out of me. That was in a prayer time at 7 a.m. in the morning. Later that day, just 3 hours later, 3 days he got up. No, don't get me started. No, but 3 hours later, I'm at Spirit Aero Systems recording this video. My mentor says, hey, so-and-so's leaving the company. We want you to apply for that job. Long story short, I end up getting that job, and that pivoted me into HR for the last 3 years before I jumped. And with
Yes.
that, I got a pay raise. And so when you have that track record of experiences where you begrudgingly did it, but you listened to God, and then something even more beautiful came out of it that you couldn't, because the STEM outreach coordinator job at Georgia Tech was a massive pay cut from an engineering salary. Meanwhile, God's like, if you trust me enough, I'm about to set you up at the same company you work at in HR. You're going to get paid more and you're going to be fulfilled because you're going to get to lead the college internship program. You're going to get to hire Black and brown engineers, which is all a part of your mission of what you're trying to do for the next generation in the STEM industry, making it more diverse. I didn't know all that was around the corner, but he's like, just trust me. So this, when struggling and wanting to be in love and wanting to have a person and seeing all the, proposal video, I'm a sap, y'all. I love, and wanting it so badly, but being like, you know what you did in my work life, in from engineering to HR, which was, I never, ever knew that was going to be part of my journey and how amazing it was. I'm like, yeah, you know best. You know better than me. You got it. You got it. I'm a friend. Got it. Yeah.
You got the wheel just in the passenger seat. I wanted to ask a little bit. I didn't really ask too much of just like, how's your family with everything now? Like you said, you had a partner for a year. How was that bringing the partner? Did you bring the partner with the family?
No.
Okay, we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
No. So, because one thing I forgot to mention was, when I originally told him, right, it was, I'm struggling with this.
Oh, right. Yeah, you did mention that. So
it wasn't until July of 2021 where me and my mom went on a mother-son trip because her birthday is July 9th. I'm July 15th. So we went on a mother-son trip to Orlando. And after that trip, like right when we got back, I was like, I know she already knows, but I'm going to tell her. I'm going to say it. And so we were in the parking lot of a bank or something. And I said, before we drive home, I just need to tell you, I know you already know this, but I'm gay. This is my life. This is me. And this is how I'm living my life, moving forward. And of course she, has love for me, and she, of course, verified, I knew since you were a kid and stuff, but I think there was still some sticker shock of like, cause something I had to learn is like, parents are often grieving. Sometimes it's not that they just like are mad at you or frustrated with you, but they're like, they've imagined your life a certain way. And then when it's not that way, it's like processing. But as the gay child, it's frustrating because like, what do you mean you're grieving? I went through all this bullying and all this, like that's where I get frustrated. And even shared some of those things with her, and she was, oh my God, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know, because once again, I wasn't telling anybody, but also who was I going to tell?
Right.
And so we have certainly, so my mother and I have certainly grown. We just had a conversation maybe a couple months ago, because when I did get into the relationship, it was like, so so then I told my dad as well. I knew my dad's response, very, very much not in agreement or in support of that lifestyle and, that sort of thing. But, I love you as my son. Like that won't change. So, it's the best case scenario for me, because a lot of times, it may not go that way. It may not be that way. And I think also I am a grown man who is living on my own, so it is a little different than like a 17-year-old or 16-year-old who might get risk kicked out the house, that sort of thing.
You a whole engineer, you making money.
Right. So, it's like it's cool, and I knew it was crazy because like I wasn't really nervous to tell my dad because I already knew his stance, and we actually in the coming out conversation we had a very extensive conversation about scripture, which was enriching. It was kind of like, yeah, I wasn't expecting this, but it was like, oh, but what does that mean? What is the context around this? What about this? Okay, we're talking about slavery now, and what is that implications of that in the Bible? So we had a very, very broad conversation on scripture in that conversation, and I knew his position wouldn't change, but it was good to know that okay, he loves me as a son. Okay, so cool. And my mom, cool. Like I said, sticker shock, but still cool. And then when I got in the relationship, it was like things got weird because it was kind of like
you wasn't lying. It's real.
Yeah, I feel like it made it real when I got into my relationship, and so it was definitely challenging. I think definitely wanting to respect my family and parents' privacy in our conversations. But what I will say is that was a journey, and it was kind of frustrating for me because I was like, man, I'm so happy right now, but I know that I really don't think I will be introducing. One, it's early, right? We were only together 5 months, but I don't even know what that looks like in the future, that sort of thing. So it was a bit challenging and a bit hard and frustrating for me because I'm like, we was all cool, everything was cool, and then like it got kind of weird. It got kind of But once again, I'm an empath naturally, so a lot of my mindset goes to okay, well, what are they going through? Like, God, this is actually real. Oh my God, and I think even because additional family members. Right? Once I came out and put it out on social media and all that stuff. And I think there was some fear for both of my parents on that. And what are they going to think? What's the family going to think? And by and large, a lot of all of my family, extended family outside of my immediate family, chill, like been fine. Actually, there's a couple family members when I came out and posted the videos online, by and large, Wichita community, a lot of even Christian community was very, supportive and support in the sense of like, I love you, Roy. I may not agree with this. And I am so okay with that. So it was really awesome to see that response. But there were like 2 or 3 people who I had done gigs with or performed at their church that were like, coming with the scriptures or whatever. And once again, you have to understand, I come from that world. So for me, it's not as much of a shock as it might be for other people. And so I'm like, let them get it out. Just let them get it out because they feel, a lot of times Christians are living life like, hey, I gotta answer for this when I get to heaven, So I'm like, let them get it out. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm actually okay with that. But there was 2 family members of mine where I had to end up blocking the people who were saying the scriptures and, this is wrong and all this stuff. Not because I was offended by them, but because my family members were on Facebook. I mean, they were coming after them. And I would privately DM my aunt, like, I love you and I appreciate the support, but you can't be talking like that on my page. Like, she was going in, which also made me feel good too, though.
Right, that she has your back.
So by and large, the broader family, they are so cool and chill. But I think, your parents, they're your parents. So it's so close to home. And so after the relationship ended, things kind of came back to regular again. And so me and my mom just had a conversation. My dad, like I said, I know his vantage point. So as long as we have an understanding of respect, nothing else is going to change. You know what I mean? So I'm not, but on my mother's side of things, we did have a conversation a couple months ago, just like, hey, things got a little weird when I was in my relationship. And I know it's still a process and you're still trying to process everything I said, but like me and my mom are so close. And so I'm like, I want you to be a part of that part of my life too. So I know it's going to be a journey to get there, but I just want to address that and share how I was feeling going through that and not necessarily having the closest connection. And so, she acknowledged that. And I think, but also to my mother's credit, I'm not going to go too far into this, but to my mother's credit, she was like, well, and you said, he reminded you of so-and-so and so, and I didn't like so-and-so and so. So I think part of like mother's intuition of like,
he ain't the one. Yeah.
And I respect her for that too, because mother does know best, So it was a balance of those 2 things.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this in the past of like Kueen Talk episodes of like, we come to terms with this. You've known that you've had these feelings since you were kindergarten, but you didn't express yourself till you're at 27. So it's like, we fight with this for 27 years technically, but we tell
What?
our parents and we expect them to get it like right away.
Yeah.
And so I understand like the grieving process. But one thing I haven't brought up yet in this podcast, which it's come up a couple times, but you brought it up again, is just like the parents saying they already knew. So in a sense, like sometimes our parents like you've already like envisioned it already. So like why now when I'm actually telling you
Girl,
yes.
tell you that was the part I had to talk to my therapist about that several sessions because I'm talking about it gracefully now. But in the moment, not to my mother's face, but like to my siblings. So my siblings, A1. My brother, I love him so much. He was like, I was going through every comment on Instagram and I was waiting for somebody. I was like, not you going through. I felt so loved in that moment. Like, I love my siblings. But I would vent to them because in the moment but she said she knew since I was a kid. Like, even before I knew, like, and so it's very frustrating because you're like, what do you have to grieve or what do you have to process if this, and then even like, well, the world is so mean. So I'm also processing the fact that my son is now going to be in the world. Everybody's going to know he's gay and they might treat him. I'm like, but that's what I was going through in middle school and high school and had nobody but God. So, I'm used to it now. Like, it's not,
Yeah.
that's when I needed, my parents. So
why did you feel like you weren't comfortable enough to tell your parents that you're getting bullied at school?
I will tell you, I had so once, like I said, singing kind of became the safety net, but the very first prominent solo, which this is so funny, that I had, it really cracks me up. To me, it's like God has a sense of humor. I did not pick the song. I'm in 6th grade. My music teacher comes up to me and she's like, we got this talent show. Do you want to do a solo? Because they could see that I had a gifting or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I would love to. What song, Queen, does she give me? Out of all the songs in the universe, Lil Richard, Tutti Frutti. I said, I'm a 6th grader, so I'm not thinking anything about what Tutti Frutti means. Nobody's ever said that to me before. Oh, he's a Tutti Frutti, or he's fruit. Nobody ever said that to me at that time. So when I listen to the by the way, that song is so fire. But I don't know who Little Richard is because I grew up in a cold church. So my music catalog is very limited because I didn't have TV growing up. I didn't have until 8th grade is when we got the first TV. So very, very limited in information and stuff, in music and all that. So I don't know Little Richard. I never heard the song before. All I heard when she played it for me was them high, and I love high notes. That's what you do singing. Anybody who's ever been in a performance where I'm singing, falsetto's gonna get in there somewhere. And so I was elated. I'm like, and it's upbeat. Hey, and I go home and I'm like, I'm gonna do a solo in the talent show, and they're like, awesome, because my dad is a singer too, and so that's kind of my grandfather's. We all have the same name, Roy Nelson Moye. So of course, proud dad, like, ooh, what are you singing? And my mother and father were in the kitchen together, and I said, Mrs. Rook said that it's called Tutti Frutti by this guy named Little Richard. My dad's eyes, I mean, and he was frozen with fear. Like, he didn't say a word. And my mom is like, okay. Oh, okay. And then my dad is like, he's not saying words. He's just kind of like, okay. And then it was like this parent meeting that just happened in front of me. And she's like, Roy, because my family doesn't call me Roy. They call me Roy T. She's like, Roy. So I know she's talking about that. Roy, it's going to be okay. We'll ask the teacher. There's this little conversation happening right in front of me. And in that moment, I'm thinking something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but it might have to do with the gay thing that I'm hiding deep with, and then I start thinking Tutti Frutti. Oh my God. And it was this whole thing. I think they may even have met with the music teacher, but in the end, they let me sing the song. And I had a fun time singing the song, but that's a very distinct moment in my life where I knew something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point moving forward, it was just like, yeah. And then I did theater. What did I do? We did Schoolhouse Rock and something else. But when I got into doing those that show, Schoolhouse Rock, that we did, I got introduced to real gay people, like in theater, right? Which oftentimes thespians and people in the musical theater world are in the LGBTQ plus community. And I remember being mortified because of what had happened with my parents, of that. And of course, I know what's inside of me. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't do theater. I can't be around these people because it's going to rub off. People are going to assume. Of course, the bullying started that year. So like people are going to know that I'm gay because I'm with the gay people. And so it just became this whole thing of like, you must suppress. You cannot get involved in theater. And I tried theater again one more time in ninth grade with Wizard of Oz. And I was the guy in the door who was like crying, the crocodile tears and stuff. But once again, in high school, people are now a little bit more assertive with being gay or whatever, in the LGBTQ plus community, especially in theater. They're supported, they're nurtured. And so they're like, I'm me, So it was a little bit more pronounced in middle school. And I was like, oh, no. I got it. And I remember my friends were asking me at the time, are you gay? Because I was in theater. So I was like, I gotta cut it off. And so those things kind of
did talks like happen in your house? Like,
no. Oh, and I'm forgetting a whole other thing. So when we did get the TV, and Ellen DeGeneres would pop up, or what? I mean, it was a very homophobic home. And so, and I'm not trying to rag on my parents or family members. That's the way the world was at that time.
Right. Yeah.
It was not. You weren't seeing gay commercials or commercials for Men's Warehouse and two guys kissing. You weren't seeing any of that. So anytime something gay would come up, it would be like, oh, look at this, look at that, And so I'm like, I'm just, clutching my pearls, just trying to stay under the radar, don't do anything suspect, yapping. But a quick thing too of just the power of God in my life. I really shunned myself from the theater world because of this, right? Like I just did not allow. I even got offered a part of a lead role in 8th grade of The Music Man, and all an accident, because the person who sang the solo for 76 Trombones, which is a song from that musical, in a choir concert, that person was out of town. The music teacher said, hey, Roy, can you stand in? I stood in and, I did my 76 trombones, lend the right on the 110 chord. I mean, I'm just doing my thing. She's like, I got it. You're going to be my music man. So like after that concert, she's offering me the lead role in this musical. But because of the whole gay thing, I'm like, I can't do it. And I ended up being in the Barbershop Quartet, which they have a smaller role in the musical. So I did it still, but I wasn't the lead role. And every time I would watch the lead person out there, I'd be like, that should be me. I know I could have killed that role, but because of this. Well, fast forward to 2023. Long story short, I do an audition right here in this very apartment for The Wiz on Broadway. And I get a call back to go to New York to audition for The Wiz, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, the Lion, all 4 of them, and do that audition, make it to the director's audition. So I got to audition for, as The Wiz, for the Wiz musical that they brought back to Broadway, and got to have that experience. And no, I did not get selected because, child, I didn't know what I was doing in that room. I could sing.
You learned, though.
She said, you got the voice, but basically the feedback was, if you want to seriously, take on musical theater, work on the acting, which that makes perfect sense. Like, I've been singing a lot. But that moment was so special. And there's a vlog on YouTube about it where I was crying my eyes out in New York City because I was like, those years ago where I was like, you can't do this because of this thing. And now, because I've loved myself and I've embraced myself, to audition in Wichita, Kansas, do what you can with what you have right where you are, and to make it to the director's room, which you don't know what you don't know. There are people in Wichita who have children around my age who are on Broadway. And they've told me, Roy, there are people who go to Juilliard, there are people who go to all these schools and never get an audition in front of the actual director of a musical. I didn't know that. I shut myself from theater. I don't know that. So I just like, wow, God, what an amazing, opportunity to bring it full circle, for what.
Definitely. And you got so much going on. But I think like now that you've taken a step out the corporate world, STEM music, this is what you are going to pursue full time. Are you still involved with like the church and stuff like that with leading the worship team, and do you still do
Yeah,
that?
not in that capacity. Um, it's too long of a story to tell, but basically it was, like, hey, if you're going to live this life, you can't lead worship.
Was
And
that
that
by
was
you or by them?
by the church. And that was very heartbreaking. And I have a lot of empathy because once again, y'all, because the audience could be like, shame on them, but it's like, I was that person. I was the person who thought that same way. So I really did understand, but was it still painful? Yes. Because that was so much of my life. Um, but so I ended up stepping away, and by the way, everyone was like, you're still welcome to be in the church, but that's kind of awkward, right? If you're leading worship and then you're gonna just attend church like you weren't this person who was up there leading worship. So it was that was painful. I ended up going to another church that was kind of from the ground up, and had a great time with them. Did not lead worship or anything, so didn't have that capacity, but kind of wanted to have an opportunity to share my gifts, and ran into the same hurdle, which also was painful. Once again, I do understand why these people are saying what they're saying, and of course, does it feel good? No. Should it be that way? No. But in the context of the Christian community, gospel music, Christian music, I was in that space. So I really do know that world. And so I ended up attending. Now I attend another church where that option is available. I'm not saying that they're for everything, and support everything, but that option is available. And it's because of a friend that goes there. And so, that has been refreshing just to know that, okay, if I want to share my gifts in church, which I do, like these are
Right.
God's gifts, that opportunity is available. And then when I go back to Kansas City, I sing at my mother's Black Catholic church, which I love. Shout out to St. Monica's. I sing in the choir all the time, lead solos, do different things like that. And so God has opened up a path for me to still engage and share my gift, and then of course, right here in this corner, I'm starting to do covers. So I can sing whatever I want in this corner, and put it out to the world. So the worship is still very much real. And I'm excited to do even more with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just what's next for STEM music? I know you have a couple more tour dates. After that, how if someone wants to book you, what do we do? How do
Yeah. Yeah, so STEM Music finishing up this national fall tour. So I got some keynotes happening in early 2025. I get to speak at South by Southwest EDU, which is a huge
I did
conference.
see that.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. So huge educational conference in Austin, Texas. And so second time getting to speak there. So excited to build the brand. And so, yeah, for all STEM music things, you just go to thestemmusic.com. That's THESTEMUSIC.com. You can find all information there of how to book, my schedule of events and the tour schedule. All of that stuff is there on the website. And so I'm just excited for STEM Music in particular. I want to bring back the STEM Music podcast and relaunch that in 2025. So I'm really excited about that. Build more concert dates, keynotes, and start to introduce some workshops. So really excited about that. And another thing for the audience, I am diving back into the R&B world, and I'm really, really excited about it. I have a song called Found You that I just went in the studio to record. Shout out to my producer, Corey Rolfe, Young C, Mixed Down Studios, right here in Wichita, Kansas. And make sure you stream it. Make sure you listen to it. It's all about finding that person and what that feels like. So, yeah.
I love that. I was just gonna ask something, but I'm gonna ask it off the thing.
Okay, okay,
I ain't gonna put you on blast like that. I ain't
okay,
gonna put you on
okay.
blast
I
like that.
appreciate that.
I ain't gonna put you on blast
Not in
like
a
that.
relationship at the moment. Once again, can't date till 2025. But when you find certain people in your life that give you a certain feeling, or once again, like I said, I now know what I'm looking for, what I want in that person. It might inspire a couple things. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes, Roy. What do you want to leave the audience with today?
Same thing we said earlier. Do what you can with what you have right where you're at. God loves you. Jesus loves you. And if you want to have a relationship with God, with Jesus, it is there for you to have. Just say, hey, how do we do this, God? Just start with that. Okay. Also, big lesson I learned this year. Ask for help now because later may never come. Ask for help now because later may never come. So instead of saying, well, I'll just wait, I'll just wait, ask for help now. There are people who want to help you. There are people who want to nurture you. There are people who want to support you. And they're out there, trust me. So, yeah, that's kind of what I would leave everybody with.
Yes, I love that. Thank you again, Roy. I love that quote. Like, do what you can with what you have right where you are. I wrote that down just because that's what Queen's like. Queen Talk, I have really based that off of just that statement without even having that, like, because we're doing this remote. I start on my phone with two mics. Like, that's how the in person recordings get done. Like, I literally am doing with what I have here in Wichita, Kansas. I'm able to now, like, get people from all over. So I live by the message that you're giving as well. And I just appreciate everything that you're doing for this young generation with the STEM music. And just like besides the STEM music with Real Men, Real Heroes, just doing these voluntary work that you're helping the young youth who and giving them that representation. Another thing with Queen Talk, representation matters so much to me. Growing up, not really having that, so that's another reason why I wanted to create this platform. And what you're doing for the kids is letting them see someone who that you don't see often in that world. So just kudos to you. Keep thriving. If there's anything that I could do to like help in any way, just reach out. I'm always there. So thank you again for your messages today. And yeah, you guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Queen Talk.
So much. I appreciate it. And y'all support Queen. Thank you for what you're doing in this space, creating space for people to be able to see folks who look like them, who identify the same way that they do, and just inspiring people. Wichita to the world. We're going to start to coin that phrase, Wichita to the world. Like he said, I brought the A to the world or whatever, like Wichita to the world. We're going to take it to the world. We're doing all this stuff right here in Wichita. And we're going to make a difference. We are making a difference. So keep up the great work.
Yes, for sure. Thank you guys so much again for being watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, being a supporter of Queen Talk. I hope you loved Roy Moye III's story. It's a great one. Thank you again, Roy, for coming on. Just always, you guys, family, friends, strangers, love. Be nice. Be nice.